The CEO of Fair Capitals is just like those CEOs in Chinese dramas, super hardworking, overworking, and, of course, a little arrogant. He heads to the office for a meeting about launching a new product. On the other hand, we meet our story's heroine, Shur, who lives far away in a mountain village. She's not just any village girl. She's a highly skilled martial artist and also an expert in Chinese medicine. Now that Shur has turned 20, her master gives her an important task, delivering a letter to Mr. Zhang Hongkang, the chairman of RMB 100. Not only is he a big shot, but he's also an old friend of her master. More than that, her master wants her to step out of their small village and see the world. The entire village comes to see Shi off because she's their beloved girl, and they all feel emotional about her leaving. She says her goodbyes and sets off for the city. Meanwhile, our CEO arrives at his office for an important meeting about the new product launch. However, his uncle and aunt strongly oppose his decision, but he shuts them down with his solid planning and proven success records. Yet behind the scenes, his uncle and aunt seem to be plotting something against him. Back to Shur, she finally reaches the city and even manages to find a small place to stay. The next day is the big product launch, and her friend, Hei Hua, who is in charge of it, announces that a very famous actress will be the spokesperson. But rumors are flying around that the CEO's grandfather is secretly looking for a future granddaughter-in-law through this event. Of course, the CEO isn't interested in an arranged marriage. He thinks, I have no plans to start a family right now, and this type of thing isn't for me. Meanwhile, she reaches the office address given by her master, and when she sees how massive the company is, she's completely shocked. As she tries to enter and meet Mr. Zhang Hongkong, the security guards stop her, questioning why she's there. She tells them she has an important letter to deliver from her master, but the guards keep asking more questions. In her mind, she imagines using her amazing martial arts skills to take them down in seconds. But then she remembers her master strictly told her not to get into fights in the city. Frustrated, she steps back, wondering how she can meet Mr. Zhang Hongkong. Just then, he arrives at the office, heading inside to discuss something important with the CEO. At the launching event, invitations are being checked at the entrance. Shur notices that all the VIP guests are heading inside, so she quickly comes up with a plan. She sneaks in by blending with the crowd. Meanwhile, the CEO's grandfather is worried sick about his health. The CEO barely eats, stays up all night working, and doesn't take care of himself. So the grandfather brings up the marriage topic again, hoping that getting married might bring some balance to his life. And so the stage is set for the big product launch, unexpected meetings, and maybe fate playing its role. She was confused about where to go to meet the chairman. Just then, the rehearsal for the performances began. After the rehearsal ended, everyone went to get ready, and Shur sneaked into the line and followed them. When she saw a security guard approaching, she quickly entered a room and hid. A little later, Lin entered the same room, but since she was inside a changing tent, she didn't realize that Shai was there. Meanwhile, the event had already started. From a conversation between the uncle and aunt, it became clear that they had done something to sabotage the event. Soon, we find out that Lin was secretly working with them. Her plan was to ruin the event. She pretended to be unwell so she wouldn't have to perform, and in return, the uncle and aunt promised to pay her a lot of money. This way, she could legally break the contract without consequences. While discussing this, she secretly eavesdropped from inside the stand. As the performance was about to begin, Lin was called to the stage. She started acting dramatically, pretending to feel unwell. Seeing her, the people who had spoken to her earlier were shocked. They realized she was faking it. At the same time, the chairman arrived at the venue. Shur, who had been waiting for a long time, was unsure of what to do. Suddenly, she noticed some medical professionals nearby. She walked over and pressed Lin's hand and wrist very hard, causing her intense pain. Lin screamed in pain but quickly continued pretending to be unconscious. Realizing this, Shur pressed even harder, making Lin scream again and break character. Furious, Lin started yelling at Shur, ruining her own makeup in the process. She then ran away, followed by her manager and assistant. On stage, people were confused about what to do now that the spokesperson had run away. Then, Shari found herself stepping onto the stage. Feeling a bit nervous in front of so many people, she didn't know what to say. The music suddenly started playing, and the lights dimmed. Everyone's attention was now on Shar. At first, Shur felt a little embarrassed, but then she recalled her master's words. She took a deep breath and began her performance, showcasing her martial arts skills. The audience loved it, and even Chen, who was initially surprised, appreciated it since the performance turned out to be a success. The grandpa was particularly impressed. He went on stage, introduced Shur as the new spokesperson, and officially welcomed her into the company. However, Shur quietly told him, "My name isn't Lin." Later, Shur was taken to the chairman's office. First, he asked Lin to be ready to pay compensation for breaking the contract. Then he turned to Shur, asking about her and why she was there. Shur explained that she had come to find someone, but she hadn't found them yet. The chairman thanked her for saving the event and offered her a temporary job at the company until everything regarding the event was properly settled. He also suggested that she work with Asha, hoping she could help she find the person she was looking for. Meanwhile, she goes to meet Grandpa, where we also meet Joe's younger brother Seren, who has returned home after skipping his classes to play Go with Lanka. Meanwhile, Joe and Shur sit and wait for Grandpa, but Shar, with her constant chatter, starts annoying him. Just then, Grandpa arrives and Shar introduces herself, explaining that she has brought a letter from her master for him. When Grandpa asks for her master's name, she tells him it is Shixing Chauhan. Hearing this name, Grandpa is completely shocked. After reading the letter, Grandpa shares a story many years ago. Master Shixing had saved his life during a mountaineering expedition on a very high mountain when he was in grave danger. Despite the risk, Master Shixing had risked his own life to save him. From that moment, they became close friends, and Master Shixing would visit Grandpa every year, bringing many gifts. However, Grandpa had always regretted that he was never able to properly repay Master Shixing for saving his life. No one knew about this regret. In the letter, Master Shixing wrote that his biggest concern was Shur, as she had no one else besides him. He requested Grandpa to take care of her. Grandpa then declares that from today, she will be his adopted daughter, making her part of the Zhou family. Hearing this, Joe and Seren are shocked. When Grandpa asks why, they jokingly say that if Shur becomes their adopted sister, they would have to call her Auntie, which they're not really comfortable with. They also assume that Shuri wouldn't like being called that either. Grandpa laughs and agrees, saying they should first help Shuri settle in the city. He considers buying a big house for her, but Shuri immediately refuses, saying she doesn't need a luxurious house. She explains that she has lived in a small village all her life, and city life is already overwhelming. She has already arranged a place to stay and will gradually adapt to the city. She wants to earn her own way forward through hard work. The next day, Shur arrives at the office and officially enrolls as an employee. Since Joe had brought her in, the staff treated her with respect. However, since she was new and from the countryside, Joe instructed his assistant not to give her too much work. Meanwhile, Joe also tells Shur to think carefully about why Lin suddenly ran away from the event. He already suspects that his uncle and aunt were behind it, but he has no proof. During Shur's first few days at the office, she isn't given any tasks. She arrives with high hopes of working hard, but no one assigns her anything. Frustrated, she starts asking colleagues for work, finishing their tasks very quickly, yet still isn't given more work. By the end of the workday, she is completely bored and decides to confront Joe in his office. Joe explains that since she is new, people don't know her capabilities yet, but tells her not to worry. He advises her to stay active, focus on learning, and help others when needed. This way, she will gradually integrate with the team. At that moment, Joe suddenly gets a headache. Shur tells him to sit down, then checks his pulse with her fingers. From this, she immediately understands his health condition. Earlier, his assistant had also mentioned that Joe works late nights and sometimes even forgets to eat. Shur realizes his health is in bad shape. When Joe asks what she's thinking, Shur doesn't say anything and leaves. That night, she goes home and prepares herbal medicine for him. The next morning, she brings the medicine to the office, but its strong smell fills the room, making the staff uncomfortable. She finishes preparing it and takes it to Joe's cabin, but he hasn't arrived yet. While waiting, she notices that his desk is messy, so she organizes everything neatly. After that, she starts helping her colleagues, bringing water for some, relieving pain for others, making herself useful wherever she can. So, Shui decides to help by taking the suit for dry cleaning. However, when she finds out that dry cleaning would take 3 to 4 days, which she thinks is too long, she buys a bar of soap and washes the suit herself in the washroom, then hangs it on the terrace to dry. She feels really happy after doing this. At the office, everyone starts talking to Shi more nicely, greeting her with hellos. Meanwhile, a man named Mr. Lin arrives to sign a contract with Joe's company. Joe's assistant takes him to the waiting room, and Shi follows behind, bringing water for Mr. Lin. However, when Joe looks for the proposal he had prepared for Mr. Lin, he can't find it on his desk. In fact, everything on his desk is missing. He becomes frustrated and a little angry, realizing that someone entered his office without permission and moved his things around. To get answers, Joe asks his assistant to come, but she is currently busy taking care of Mr. Lin. She also doesn't know who entered his office. While searching for the file in the bookshelf, she notices the arrangement pattern and says that whoever cleaned the office arranged everything alphabetically. Following this pattern, she finds the proposal file, bringing relief to everyone. Before going to talk to Mr. Lin, Joe decides to calm his mind with some coffee. He picks up a cup from under his table, thinking it's coffee, and drinks it only to realize it's the herbal medicine. The strong taste makes him feel even more irritated, and he immediately demands to know who did this. That's when everyone remembers that in the morning, Shire was preparing herbal medicine in the office, and the smell was exactly the same. They confirm that it must have been Shay who entered his office and most likely rearranged the files too. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Mr. Lin is experiencing back pain and Shire notices it. She asks him about it, but Mr. Lin is already very annoyed and demands to know where Shire is. The assistant tells him that she is with Mr. Lin. Everyone starts rushing toward the waiting room, worried that Shire might do something reckless. When they arrive, they see Shi stepping on Mr. Lin's back, performing an unexpected treatment move. Seeing this, Joe freaks out and immediately pulls Shire away by her hand. Mr. Lin, surprised by the sudden movement, ends up fainting. Later, Shi prepares herbal medicine again for Joe, but he flat out refuses to drink it. Instead, he scolds her for touching his things without permission. Shire accepts his anger calmly and replies, "But you were the one who told me to stay active and help others. That's why I cleaned your office and organized everything. It's my way of helping." She then adds, "Besides, I saved you money by cleaning it myself instead of hiring someone." Hearing this, Joe gets suspicious and asks, "Wait, how exactly did you save money?" That's when she proudly brings him to the terrace, where his suit is hanging to dry. Joe explodes with rage, completely losing it. He drags Shi to Grandpa, wanting to complain about her behavior. At Grandpa's place, Joe starts ranting about Shire, listing out all the things she has done. This reminds Grandpa of the time when Joe's mom was criticized in a similar way. Grandpa had chosen her to marry into the family, despite many people speaking against her. Joe then asked Grandpa to send Shire away, offering to cover all her expenses and even suggesting that she be moved to another company owned by a friend. However, by this point, Shire has already made many acquaintances at the office. Even Seren teases Joe, saying, "Maybe you like her. You've never brought any girl home before." Shire firmly denies any possibility of a relationship, saying, "That's impossible. We just met." Hearing this, Seren laughs and exchanges phone numbers with her. Just then, Grandpa and Joe come back outside, and Grandpa calls Shire in for a private conversation. Inside, Grandpa asks Shire what she thinks of Joe. At first, she praises him, but then she truthfully points out his health issues, explaining that his condition is serious and he needs proper rest, regular meals, and exercise. Otherwise, his health will deteriorate further. As she finishes explaining, Joe suddenly enters the room, and the strong smell of herbal medicine fills the air. Joe instantly loses his temper and starts shouting. Finally, Joe demands to know what Shire is doing there. She tells him she's just doing her job. Before he can say anything, Grandpa's trusted aide arrives and announces that, by the chairman's special order, Shire is now the vice president of administration at Fair and Capitals. Joe is completely shocked, as this position doesn't even exist in the company. Grandpa's aide explains that the chairman created this position specifically for She, and her main responsibility is to take care of Joe and assist him. Joe refuses immediately, saying, "There's no need for this. I already have a secretary and I don't need anyone else's help, especially not She's." She, however, insists that he does need help and starts lecturing him. She explains that his deteriorating health is the reason Grandpa personally appointed her, and that he should just accept it. Frustrated, Joe keeps arguing, saying, "I don't have any problem, and I don't need your help." This leads to a back-and-forth argument where She keeps insisting that he does need help, while Joe keeps denying it. In anger, she sarcastically apologizes, then suddenly pinches his leg hard, listing out all of his health issues again. Joe refuses to admit any pain, claiming his body is completely fine, but it's obvious that he is in a lot of discomfort. He just doesn't want to lose to She, but she refuses to back down. She completely exposes his poor health, leaving him with no choice but to listen. She then declares that no matter what, she will take care of him, and that he won't be able to escape from her. To make matters worse for Joe, She calls Grandpa on a video call. With no way out, Joe is forced to drink the herbal medicine. Seeing his misery, the company staff secretly enjoys the moment. Meanwhile, Mr. Lin arrives for his meeting. Before anything else, Joe apologizes on behalf of She. However, Mr. Lin surprises him by saying there's no need to apologize. He actually came to thank She. Thanks to her therapy, his chronic back pain of many years has completely disappeared. Joe is stunned. Before leaving, Mr. Lin requests that next time they meet, She should come along, as he wants to introduce her to some friends who might need her treatments. After the successful meeting, Joe reflects on his behavior. He tells She that he might have been too harsh on her earlier, and admits that he shouldn't have snapped at her. However, instead of apologizing, he comes up with a plan to get rid of her. Joe praises She's talent, telling her that since she successfully treated Mr. Lin, she should use her skills to help more people. He suggests that she should consider joining a medical college to further her knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine. He then reveals that he has already filled out an entrance exam application for her at Ranji University. All she needs to do is sign the form, and her admission will be confirmed. She is thrilled at first, but after thinking for a moment, she says she can't accept such a big favor from her boss. Grandpa has already done so much for her, and he entrusted her with Joe's care. She says she won't leave until she makes sure he is fully recovered. Joe, trying to persuade her, says, "This is a life-changing opportunity for you. Don't waste your talent on me." But She sees through his plan. She directly calls him out, saying, "You just want me to leave the company, don't you?" Without hesitation, Joe admits it, saying, "Yes, so what? It's a win-win for you." She stands her ground, saying that she will only leave once he is completely recovered. Annoyed, Joe snaps, "Who do you think you are trying to control me? If something happens to me, I'll just go to a doctor." She smirks, reminding him, "Grandpa's orders are absolute." Running out of ways to push her out, Joe tries a different approach. He pulls out a bill and shows it to her. It's the bill for his damaged suit, which She washed with soap, completely ruining the fabric. The cost? 8,000 yen. She was completely shocked. Before she could react, Joe told her that she had to pay for the damages to stay in the company. However, he also offered her another option, signing the Ranji University entrance form. If she signed it, he would financially support her studies. Since She didn't have enough money, she thought about it for a long time and considered signing the form. But in the end, she refused to sign and told Joe that she would pay him back through hard work. However, she made it clear that she wouldn't leave until his health was completely restored. Hearing this, Joe became extremely angry. He grabbed the university form and was about to sign it himself when She suddenly hit his hand, causing his wrist to dislocate. Before Joe could yell at her, he suddenly lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself in a hospital. That's when he learned that he had a weak heart. Beside him was Shasha, who told him that She was the one who had relocated his wrist and brought him to the hospital. Even the doctor praised She's treatment skills. However, Joe was still furious, and told Shi that he could report her to the police or even sue her for hurting him. But Shi remained calm, saying that it wouldn't make any difference because she had proof. She revealed security footage that showed how she had carried him across the office and into the city to get him medical attention. Seeing this, Joe felt incredibly embarrassed in front of the entire office staff. His anger towards Shi only increased. Just then, Shi entered the hospital room again, carrying herbal medicine. Seeing her, Joe immediately snapped at her, but she quickly apologized for accidentally hurting him. However, Joe refused to believe that it was an accident. "How can a normal person accidentally dislocate someone's wrist?" he shouted. Shi calmly explained, "Martial artists like me know exactly where to hit. That's why I want to take full responsibility for your recovery. I won't leave until you're completely healed." Joe ignored her words and tried to grab his suit to leave, but Shi took the suit before him, saying that she wouldn't let him go until he forgave her. She even offered her own hand, saying, "If you're that angry, go ahead and break my wrist." Joe tried to leave, but Shi held onto his hand tightly, refusing to let him go. They started struggling, leading to a ridiculous and funny scene where Joe hurt his wrist again. On top of that, he accidentally got punched in the face by Shi, who was demonstrating an attack move. Seeing the chaos, Joe finally managed to escape, running away as fast as he could. Meanwhile, the office staff had a great time laughing at the situation. That's when Joe decided to take his revenge. He would make Shi's life at the company unbearable, forcing her to leave on her own. The next day, when she arrived at the office, the first thing she did was apologize to Joe again. This time Joe forgave her, but he had already set his plan in motion. As part of her daily routine, Shi brought him herbal medicine and a healthy breakfast. At first, Joe refused to drink it, but after Shi scolded him in front of the entire office, he quickly drank it and took the breakfast with him. Seeing this, his assistant was shocked because Joe had never obediently followed anyone's instructions before. Rumors started spreading that something was going on between Joe and Shi. Meanwhile, Joe finalized his plan to kick Shi out of the company. He planned to take Shi to an important executive meeting and embarrass her in front of everyone so badly that she would quit the company herself. During the meeting, Joe put Shi on the spot by asking her to explain the company's new product. Shi panicked for a moment, but then remembered a motivational line her master had taught her. She confidently repeated it, and to everyone's surprise, the entire room applauded her words. Instead of embarrassing herself, Shi ended up impressing everyone. Later, during lunch in the cafeteria, Shi forcefully made Joe eat healthy food since he was very picky about his diet. Seeing this, 3 of their colleagues got extremely excited as their suspicions about something happening between Joe and Shi were growing. At that moment, Sho, another company employee, walked in and saw them sitting together. Feeling uncomfortable, she turned around and left without saying anything. After lunch, Shi forced Joe to exercise by making him walk in the sun. She kept repeating motivational lines from her master as she pushed him to keep moving. After a long session, they both returned to the office. There, Joe asked Shi to learn about the basic tasks in the office, and she agreed to start training under his secretary. Joe brought in a huge pile of files and told Shi that this was just the beginning. There was still a lot more to study. Shi sat down to read, but after going through so many files, her brain felt like it was going to explode. Meanwhile, Joe smugly commented that she wouldn't be able to handle the workload, and that a countryside girl like her wouldn't be able to adapt to city life so quickly. Determined to prove him wrong, Shi worked even harder, making copies of the files and taking them home to study overnight. Realizing how persistent she was, Joe was a little surprised this girl was different from everyone else. Maybe this time, he would be the one to give up instead of her. Shi started feeling sleepy, so to stay awake, she drank some herbal tea. At the same time, Joe was also still awake and went outside for some fresh air. That's when he saw Shirbut blood was dripping from her nose. Seeing the blood, Joe suddenly froze. It triggered a painful memory from his past. He remembered a tragic accident where his mother and father had died. Overwhelmed, Joe lost consciousness. When he woke up, Shi was beside him. But something was different. Joe had completely reverted to a childlike state. He didn't even recognize Shar and looked terrified. He was trembling like a scared child and even hid under the table. Seeing him like this, Shi was shocked. When she tried talking to him, Joe started crying, completely panicking. Trying to calm him down, Shur asked if he was hungry. When he nodded, she quickly made him instant noodles. Joe ate like a little kid, finishing his food without hesitation, but he was still afraid. He didn't want Shur to leave, so she brought him a blanket and gently covered him. In the end, Joe fell asleep in Shur's lap. The next morning, when he woke up, he saw Shar beside him and instantly backed away. As soon as he realized what had happened, he warned Shur not to tell anyone about it. But Shur became even more curious. What had happened to him? Why did he suddenly behave like a child? Why was he so afraid? When Joe realized she was too interested in his secret, he threatened her, saying that if she told anyone what she saw, she would regret it. After saying that, he quickly left, but Shur followed him. Determined to know the truth, Shur kept chasing him even when he locked himself inside his office. Since she wouldn't give up, Joe ran into Shasha's office to hide. Shasha was surprised to see him enter so suddenly and asked, "What's wrong with you today? You never leave your office and now you're here working?" Trying to cover up his actions, Joe made up an excuse, saying that he just wanted a change of environment. However, as soon as he heard Shur's voice outside, he immediately hid under a chair. Seeing his ridiculous behavior, Shasha laughed, but Joe quickly left before Shur could find him. Still, Shur didn't stop chasing him. To escape from her, Joe started running all over the office. At one point, he managed to lose her by getting into an elevator, but Shur simply took the stairs and caught up with him again. Desperate, Joe ran away again, but Shur still found him. This time she cornered him and said, "Now that it's just the two of us, tell me the truth what happened to you." They were so close that Shur suddenly realized the tension between them and backed away slightly. Trying to change the subject, she said, "Let's talk outside." But before they could leave, they heard footsteps approaching. Meanwhile, outside, Joe's assistant was talking to 3 colleagues who were asking why Joe had been acting so strangely today. At first, the assistant refused to say anything, but after being pressured, he finally confessed he had seen she and Joe sleeping together in the office that morning. Not only that, but they were both still in yesterday's clothes. Hearing this, the 3 of them were completely shocked. At the same time, inside the office, Joe and Shur accidentally made a noise, making the people outside suspicious. Realizing that someone was hiding inside, they demanded, "Whoever's in there, come out!" A moment later, Joe and Shuri walked out, both holding brooms and pretending to clean. They casually walked in opposite directions, acting completely innocent. Seeing this ridiculous scene, the 4 colleagues became even more suspicious. Now they were completely convinced that something was going on between Joe and Shur, but Shur still wasn't done chasing Joe. Frustrated, Joe finally lost his patience and snapped at her. Shur calmly told him, "I can't help you if you don't tell me what's wrong." Joe refused to talk, wanting to end the conversation. Just then, Grandpa called Shur, informing her that the entire family was gathering for dinner that night. Joe met his cousin Ziran, who was Uncle Wei's son. Ziran had recently opened his own swimming club, but his uncle and aunt were completely unhappy about it. They kept pressuring him to take a more stable job. When Joe arrived at the dinner, Grandpa introduced Shur to the family as his special assistant. Immediately, Aunt Wei started her fake drama, pretending to praise Shai but then subtly mocking her appearance and makeup. However, Shur wasn't affected at all. She didn't care about superficial things. As the family sat down for dinner, Uncle Wei began making indirect insults at Joe. Shur, just by looking at Uncle Wei, could tell that he had health issues. She warned him to cut down on fatty foods and sweets. Hearing this, Uncle Wei went completely silent. After dinner, Ziran approached Shur and asked if she could teach him Kung Fu. Shur told him that learning Kung Fu wasn't easy, and that she had trained since childhood to master it. Ziran then invited Shur to go downtown with him over the weekend. Shur was hesitant, but Ziran confidently said that he would ask Joe for permission. Meanwhile, Uncle Wei continued mocking Joe, targeting his leadership at the company. To change the subject, Ziran asked Shur to demonstrate self-defense techniques. Shar, wanting to prove a point, used Ziran as her practice partner. However, in the process, a glass of water accidentally spilled all over Uncle Wei's head. Feeling embarrassed, Uncle Wei quickly left the room. Later, Joe dropped Shur off at her house, which was in a dark and lonely neighborhood. Seeing the poor living conditions, Joe asked her why she didn't accept Grandpa's offer to live in a better place. Shur responded with another inspirational line from her master, explaining that life in the city was different, and that to survive, one had to take advantage of every opportunity. Joe advised her, saying, "If you don't learn to accept help from others sometimes, you won't be able to move forward." As he was about to leave, Shur stopped him and asked about his condition. Seeing her persistence, Joe finally told her the truth. He had an unusual medical condition that made him faint at the sight of blood, and so far, no cure had been found. He made Shur promise not to tell anyone. Shur agreed, but also swore that she would cure him one day. The next day, Ziran and Joe were playing badminton. Suddenly, Joe asked Ziran, "Do you have a crush on anyone?" Ziran was confused, asking why Joe was suddenly interested in his love life. Joe simply shrugged, saying, "I don't know, it just popped into my head." Ziran replied that he didn't have anyone in mind yet. Hearing this, Joe smirked, saying, "I heard you're going out with Shur soon." Ziran casually replied, "Yeah, I'm just showing her around. She doesn't know much about this place." Immediately, Joe warned him, "Stay as far away from Shur as possible. She will only bring trouble for you." Ziran laughed, saying, "That's not true. She's actually really nice, sweet, and kind-hearted. I've never met a girl like her before." Joe then raised an eyebrow, teasing, "Are you sure you don't have a crush on her?" Ziran, looking annoyed, said, "What's wrong with you today? You never talk about stuff like this. Are you jealous?" Joe scoffed. "Jealous? Why would I be jealous? I'm just saying stay away from her. She's dangerous. You can like any girl except her, and I wouldn't care." Ziran rolled his eyes. "You don't need to worry about me. I can handle myself." That night, Joe had a strange dream he dreamt about Shur's wedding. But even at the wedding, she was forcing him and Ziran to drink the herbal medicine she made. He woke up in shock and immediately called Chiku, telling him that they had an important task to do tomorrow. Chiku and Joe decided to spy on Shur and Ziran to make sure Shur wouldn't cause any trouble. The next day, Joe and Chiku started following them everywhere. Joe saw Ziran drinking coffee with Shur and immediately got furious. He believed that Shur was deliberately trying to trap his younger brother. Shur's presence was already making things chaotic, and Joe didn't want her to affect Ziran any further. Meanwhile, Joe and Chiku continued spying on them, watching as Ziran and Shur went around the city. They played games, tried different activities, watched a movie together, and everywhere they went, Joe and Chiku secretly followed them. When Shur and Ziran went shopping, Joe and Chiku were there. When they went to a restaurant for dinner, Joe and Chiku followed again. They even went on a Ferris wheel ride, which made Ziran really happy, as it was his first experience. Curious, Shur asked him if his parents had never taken him there before. That's when Ziran revealed that his parents had passed away when he was less than a year old, so he had never visited amusement parks before. Still, he was happy to experience it with Shur. They kept talking for a long time, but soon Shur started making fun of Joe. Hearing this, Joe tried eavesdropping, but he couldn't hear properly. Then Ziran asked Shur directly, "Do you like my brother?" Shur immediately denied it, saying it was impossible. But Joe's expression changed. It seemed like he was starting to like Shur without realizing it. After that, Ziran and Shur moved to another part of the city, and Joe, feeling exhausted, complained, "Do these two never get tired? How long are they going to walk around?" Next, she and Ziran went to an escape room game, where all players had to wear costumes and masks. To keep spying on them, Joe and Chiku also entered the game in disguise. After the game, Shur walked home alone, as she had already memorized all the routes. Once she left, Ziran called out Joe, confronting him. Ziran directly asked, "Why are you following me?" At first, Joe made an excuse, saying he was just worried that Shur might cause trouble. But Ziran smirked, saying, "I saw you spying from the very beginning. I'm not a child anymore. You don't need to worry about me." Then, Ziran dragged Joe to a restaurant for dinner. Meanwhile, Shur was working on a new treatment to help cure Joe's blood phobia. However, the medicine had a horrible smell which made everyone around her feel nauseous. Still, Shur recorded a video of Joe saying, "If you refuse to eat this healthy food, Grandpa will find out." With no choice, Joe ate the food but immediately felt sick and sat next to the trash bin, ready to throw up. Shuri laughed at him, while Joe begged for someone to take her away before she completely ruined his life. Shasha then decided to help Joe get rid of Shur. She took Shur shopping, buying expensive modern dresses for her. At first, Shuri thought Shasha was helping her learn about city fashion, but Shasha had another plan. She was teaching Shuri how to attract men's attention and flirt. However, Shasha quickly realized that she couldn't change Shuri's personality. The next day at the office, Shasha apologized to Joe, saying, "I failed. Shuri doesn't need to change. She's already perfect the way she is." During the office meeting, Joe announced that he would take Shuri to the company retreat. Hearing this, Shuri got extremely excited and immediately went back to work with full energy. Later, a new female lead entered the story, Ji Tian, the heiress of the G group of companies and Joe's childhood sweetheart. She was also a taekwondo champion. Upon arriving at the office, she immediately asked for information about Shuri. At that moment, she and Joe were standing together, discussing work. As soon as Ji Tian entered, Shasha was shocked. She hadn't expected her to arrive so suddenly. Ji Tian ignored everyone and walked straight into Joe's office, completely disregarding office rules. When she saw Joe laughing, she was shocked. Meanwhile, Joe was surprised to see her as well, because Ji Tian was known for causing trouble. Noticing Shuri standing there, Ji Tian immediately took her aside and started talking to her in a very familiar way. She even invited both Joe and Shuri to lunch so they could get to know each other better. At first, Joe refused, but in the end, all three of them went to a restaurant together. Back at the office, Joe's assistant and the staff started gossiping about Ji Tian. They revealed that Ji Tian had been chasing after Joe since childhood. On top of that, her family was one of the biggest shareholders in the company, making her a powerful figure. Not only that, but there were even rumors that Grandpa wanted Ji Tian to marry Joe. Hearing all of this, everyone started worrying about Shuri. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, as always, Joe refused Ji Tian's advances, even though she had already planned their wedding and future children in her mind. Ji Tian confidently dismissed his rejection, saying it didn't matter because he had always rejected her anyway. She then turned to Shuri, asking her to order some food. However, when Shuri saw the prices on the menu, she panicked. So instead of ordering freely, she chose the cheapest dishes. Noticing this, Joe told her to order whatever she wanted, saying that today's treat was on him, but Shuri was worried that he might deduct the cost from her salary, so she refused to order anything. Meanwhile, Ji Tian started questioning her, asking about her job and how she knew Grandpa. Shuri explained everything, telling her that Grandpa took great care of her. Then Ji Tian asked about her martial arts training. Shuri shared her story, explaining how she had trained in Kung Fu since childhood. Upon hearing this, Ji Tian revealed that she had been training in Taekwondo since childhood as well. Now that Shuri was close to Grandpa, Ji Tian suddenly challenged her to a fight. Even though Shuri wasn't interested, Ji Tian still insisted on fighting. Before the fight, Shuri warned her, saying that someone could get hurt, so it would be best not to fight seriously. But Ji Tian didn't listen. She attacked with full power. Since Shuri wasn't attacking back, she got hit a couple of times, but she still refused to retaliate. She kept telling Ji Tian to stop, but Ji Tian continued her attacks. When Shuri finally turned to leave, Ji Tian tried to attack her from behind. At that moment, Joe rushed in to stop her, but Ji Tian lost her balance and fell. Shocked, Shuri and Joe quickly ran to her side. Shuri apologized repeatedly, but Joe took Ji Tian to the hospital immediately. At the hospital, Ji Tian's leg was bandaged. Even though Shuri kept apologizing, Ji Tian's ego was completely crushed. She couldn't believe that a simple countryside girl had defeated her. In her frustration, Ji Tian ordered Shuri to leave the room and asked Joe to stay with her until she fully recovered. However, Joe said he had a lot of work to do and needed to return to the office. At this, Ji Tian suddenly put on an emotional act, pretending to be in pain. Joe felt guilty and apologized on Shuri's behalf. Hearing this, Ji Tian became even more furious, yelling at Joe for taking Shuri's side. She then declared that she hated how close Shuri was to him. When Joe tried to leave again, Ji Tian threatened him, saying that if he didn't stay until she fully recovered, she would tell Grandpa everything. With no choice, Joe was forced to stay. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Ji Tian's secretary approached Shuri and threatened her. She warned Shuri that if anything happened to Ji Tian, she would not be forgiven. Later, Joe came out of the hospital and told Shuri to go home, saying her presence wasn't needed anymore. The next day, when she arrived at the office, everyone immediately surrounded her, asking questions about her fight with Ji Tian. Even Shasha rushed in, demanding to know Ji Tian's condition. However, Joe still hadn't come to the office, making everyone suspicious that something big had happened. The office was soon filled with gossips. Since Jitian was the second largest shareholder, her injury could cause serious problems for the company. Some even worried that Grandpa might blame Joe and the company. Hearing all of this, Shur felt incredibly guilty. She realized that she might have caused trouble for Grandpa and Joe. Not wanting to cause any more problems, Shur made a painful decision. She decided to resign from the company. Jitian's assistant started pushing and shoving Shur, trying to provoke her into a fight. However, Shur didn't react because she was already in a bad mood and didn't want to cause any more trouble. She simply ignored the assistant and started walking away, but the assistant wasn't done yet. Just like Jitian, the assistant was also arrogant and aggressive. She threatened Shur, saying that if she didn't quit the job and leave the office, she would personally make her life miserable. She even started physically provoking Shur, trying to make her fight back. Just then Joe arrived. He angrily scolded the assistant, demanding, "Who gave you permission to come here? And how dare you raise your voice at our vice president?" He then ordered her to apologize to Shur. Even though she didn't want to, the assistant was forced to apologize before quickly leaving the office. Then Joe turned to Shur, repeating the words she had once told him. "When someone pushes you, you should push back." After that, he returned to his office. It was already late at night, and most of the employees had already left for home. When Joe went to check on Shur, she wasn't at her desk. Instead, he found a resignation letter that she had left behind. In the letter, Shur thanked both him and Grandpa for allowing her to work at the company. She admitted that she wasn't capable enough for this job and that her mistakes could harm the company. She also acknowledged that her presence was causing trouble, so she decided to leave before becoming a bigger burden. At the end of the letter, she reminded Joe to take care of himself, to eat on time, exercise regularly, and get proper rest. She even prescribed some medicine for him, which she had left in the office. Reading all of this, Joe felt something strange in his heart. Without hesitation, he went to look for Shar. He found her on the terrace preparing traditional medicine. Joe walked up to her and asked if she really planned to leave. Shur calmly replied that she was making medicine for GTN so her injuries would heal faster. Hearing this, Joe frowned, telling her, "You don't need to worry about her. It's just a small injury." However, Shur disagreed, saying that it was her fault and that she wanted to fix everything before leaving. She then apologized again, saying that maybe she wasn't meant to work in a corporate environment and that she might never fit into this society. Hearing this, Joe sighed and said, "Since Grandpa entrusted you to me, I'm responsible for teaching you how to adapt here. I'll help you get used to this society." He then challenged her, saying, "You think you can't work in this field? Let's test that." Flipping through a file, he mentioned that he had a visit planned for a water plant in a village. He then looked at Shuri and smirked, saying, "Since you're from the countryside, maybe your skills will be useful there." Hearing this, Shar's face lit up with excitement. She eagerly asked if she could really come along. Joe shrugged, saying, "If you want to, sure. But remember, I'm the only one who can approve anyone leaving the company." He then told her to be ready tomorrow. Shur was so happy that she even dreamed about Joe that night. The next morning, Jitian woke up furious. At the same time, Joe, who was waiting for Shur, checked his watch. He had told her to be ready 1 hour ago, but she still hadn't arrived. Growing impatient, he was about to leave, but at the last moment, Shur came running toward him. Joe got angry as Shur kept talking non-stop. She started telling him random stories, explaining that her home was far away, which is why it took her 3 hours to arrive. Even after that, she kept rambling, saying that she had never seen a plane up close before. She then started worrying about whether canceling a flight ticket would result in a refund, or if it would be better to travel by bus to save money. Frustrated by her endless chatter, Joe walked into the VIP waiting area. However, Shur was stopped at the entrance. Since her name wasn't on the VIP booking, she was asked to pay 600 won to enter. Hearing the price, she immediately backed away, saying that she didn't need to enter. Shortly after, the airport security called Joe, asking him to come to their office. Upon arriving, he found Shri there. Security had detained her because she had leather gloves, a rope, and some bottles of herbal medicine in her bag. These items were not allowed on board, and Shri was insisting that she needed to bring them for Joe. The security officers found this amusing, but they told her that she would have to leave these items behind. Shur refused, explaining that she had prepared everything for Joe's trip to the village so that he wouldn't get sick. Hearing this, Joe's anger grew even more. Security then suggested that she mail the items through the airport's shipping service. Finally, Shur agreed and quickly sent the package before joining Joe for check-in. Even as they walked through security, Shur stayed close to him. Annoyed, Joe warned her, saying, "Stay away from me or I'll cancel your ticket." They then boarded the plane and arrived at the village. Once they landed, Joe realized that his phone had no signal. Meanwhile, Shur found a tractor to take them to the water plant. As soon as they started riding the tractor, Joe's face turned pale. He was completely miserable during the bumpy ride. When they arrived in the village, the locals welcomed them by throwing beans at them. According to their beliefs, throwing beans was a way to bring good luck. Shur happily joined in, throwing beans back at them. The villagers then took them to their rooms, where they were given traditional clothes to wear for a welcome ceremony. Joe refused to wear the clothes at first, but Shur challenged him, and he finally agreed. However, when he tried putting the outfit on, the buttons wouldn't close properly, making it too tight. Seeing this, Shur started laughing, and Joe got embarrassed. In the struggle, they both fell onto the bed together, and at that moment a villager walked in. The villager immediately ran away in shock, thinking that he had walked in on something inappropriate. Later, the villagers invited them to perform something traditional. Before Joe could say anything, Shur stepped forward and performed her kung fu skills. The villagers loved it and then asked Joe to perform as well. Not knowing what to do, Joe hesitated, but the villagers encouraged him. He then tried learning some kung fu moves from Shur, but his awkward attempts made everyone laugh. Afterward, the villagers offered them food, with one lady suggesting that they eat freshly butchered chicken. She even invited them to eat at her home. Feeling overwhelmed, Joe decided to go find his own food. Shur tried to stop him, but he snapped, saying that he would find something to eat by himself. Frustrated, he wandered into the mountains, searching for food. There he found some wild mushrooms and, without thinking, cooked and ate them. However, after a while, he started feeling strange. Shai found him sitting like a lost child, looking completely dazed. She asked him what happened, and he weakly replied that he had eaten some mushrooms, but they didn't taste very good. Realizing what had happened, Shai panicked. He had eaten toxic mountain mushrooms. She immediately checked his surroundings and found the remaining mushrooms nearby. To flush out the toxins, Shur made him drink a strong herbal remedy. As the remedy took effect, Joe became extremely nauseous, and soon he finally came back to his senses. To help him recover, Shur made porridge and brought it to him. However, Joe refused to eat it, but after Shur left, his hunger got the best of him and he secretly ate the food. When Shur returned, he started complaining about the rainy weather, but as soon as Shur left again, he went back to eating. Meanwhile, at the swimming club, a mysterious woman appeared. She saw a young girl learning how to swim, and something about it caught her attention. She then approached the girl, intentionally bumping into her. When their eyes met, the two of them stared at each other for a long moment. Then the woman leaned in flirtatiously and asked if he knew how to swim. She then smiled seductively and asked, "Will you teach me?" For a moment he was completely shocked and fell silent. After some hesitation, Joe agreed to teach her how to swim. Ji-tian then went to change into her swimsuit, and even after she left, Joe couldn't stop thinking about her presence. To calm his mind, he dove into the water, but even there, thoughts of Ji-tian kept flooding his head. Moments later, Ji-tian made her entrance in a swimsuit, and Joe couldn't take his eyes off her. Taking advantage of this, Ji-tian started flirting with him, saying, "I'm scared of water. What if I drown? Please protect me." She then pretended to struggle, making Joe hold her and help her swim. Of course, learning to swim was just an excuse. After a while, she invited him to dinner and the two of them went for a candlelight dinner. They both drank alcohol, and as the night went on, things escalated. They ended up spending the night together. Meanwhile, back in the village, Shuri and Joe finally got to eat. The villagers offered them a special homemade wine, but Shur refused, saying that Joe wasn't in good condition to drink. However, Joe insisted on drinking it, believing that Shur might be up to something and trying to trick him. So he drank an entire bottle, only to get extremely drunk and pass out immediately. The villagers helped carry him back to his room, and Shur stayed behind to look after him. This, however, led to a misunderstanding. Since one of the villagers had seen them together, a rumor quickly spread that they were a couple. Later that night, Joe had nightmares. In his sleep, he mumbled his mother's name, looking distressed. Shur noticed that he was trembling from the cold, and she started checking his condition. As soon as she touched his forehead, Joe suddenly woke up. He immediately accused her, saying, "What are you doing? Were you trying to take advantage of me while I was asleep?" Shur sighed, telling him that his condition wasn't normal and that she had to check if he was okay. She then pinched his neck lightly, trying to check his pulse. By morning, Joe had finally sobered up. When he woke up, he noticed a pile of money next to him. Shur quickly explained, "Don't misunderstand. I left this here because I was training you while you slept." Hearing this, Joe felt awkward. However, he suddenly recalled the events of the night before, and his face turned red. He then asked, "Wait, we're friends, right? When did we even become friends?" Shur looked confused. Joe then explained, "We've met before multiple times at company events. I just thought you were pretending not to recognize me." Curious, Shur searched online and discovered that Joe was actually Ziran's cousin. Ziran then invited her to join him for breakfast, but Shur, feeling awkward, quickly ran away. Later, she noticed that the villagers were acting strange around Joe. People kept staring at him and whispering among themselves, causing Joe to feel uneasy. Some villagers even pointed at his neck and smirked. Feeling suspicious, Joe ran to a mirror to check his reflection. To his shock, he saw red marks on his neck marks left behind from Shur's medical examination the night before. The villagers had misunderstood it as a love bite, and that's why they were secretly laughing at him. Furious, Joe stormed off to scold Shur, telling her that because of her so-called treatment, everyone in the village now thought they were lovers. After that, the two of them visited the water plant, which was located on top of a mountain. The hike to the plant was exhausting, and Joe's condition worsened halfway through. Feeling completely drained, he demanded a vehicle. However, the village chief informed him that vehicles couldn't reach such high-altitude areas and that they had no choice but to walk. As they continued the hike, Joe's stamina gave out and he collapsed. Shur, seeing this, dragged him up and pushed him forward, forcing him to keep moving. Joe eventually gave up, saying, "Let's just turn back. There's no profit in this village anyway." Hearing this, Shur got angry, saying, "We're already halfway up. At least take a look at the plant before making a decision." She then practically dragged him up the mountain. When they finally reached the water plant, Joe examined the facility. However, he wasn't impressed, saying that the plant's condition wasn't great and it wouldn't bring much financial gain. For now, he refused to make a final decision, telling the villagers that he would inform them later. On the way back, Shur confronted him, asking, "Your grandfather chose this village for a reason." She then showed him a video of the hardworking villagers, trying to make him understand the importance of the project. As Joe observed Shur interacting with the villagers, he started recalling his childhood memories. Similarly, Shur also found herself reminiscing about her past. Meanwhile, back in the city, Jiang became serious about his feelings for Shasha. One day, he went to meet her, bringing along a book as an excuse. However, as he arrived at the underground parking lot, he saw Shasha standing with another man holding a bouquet of flowers. Seeing this, Jiang felt heartbroken and immediately walked away, deciding never to show his face to her again. The man noticed Jiang and quickly tried to hide the flowers, but Shasha had already seen them. Suspicious, Shasha questioned him, but Jiang made a lame excuse, saying that he got the flowers at a discount. She then asked him about the woman he was with. Jiang revealed that she was someone he had casually dated in the past, but Shasha didn't believe him. She invited Jiang to talk in private, where he suddenly confessed his feelings and asked her to be in a relationship with him. However, Shasha rejected him outright, saying she wasn't interested in relationships at all. Still, Jiang was persistent, asking if she just didn't want to be with him specifically, or if she wasn't interested in anyone at all. Shasha firmly stated that she had no interest in being in a relationship with anyone. Jiang, feeling defeated, simply said, "I understand." Later, he visited Joe's office to meet him, only to find out from the secretary that Joe and Shur had gone to the village to inspect a water plant. Upon hearing this, Jiang immediately understood this must have been Grandpa's plan to bring them closer together. The secretary and the rest of the staff became excited, speculating about what could be happening between Shur and Joe in the village. Meanwhile, in the village, Shur took Joe on another tour. Once again, Joe struggled to climb the steep hills, nearly passing out from exhaustion. To help him, Shur carried him on her back, using her kung fu strength. By the time they returned to the village, it was already dark. Because of the poor visibility, Joe accidentally stepped into a hunter's trap, falling into a deep pit. Upon impact, his leg got injured and blood started dripping from his wound. The moment he saw the blood, Joe's mind shut down, and he immediately regressed into his 6-year-old self. Shur jumped into the pit to help him, realizing that he had once again reverted to his childlike state. She tried pulling him up using a wooden stick, but he was too scared to grab onto it. Eventually, Shur used her own strength to pull him out. Once out, Joe clung to Shur tightly, hugging her as if she was his only source of safety. She then took him back to his room, where she treated his wound and bandaged his leg. Joe, still in his childlike state, suddenly asked, "How old am I?" Shur was stunned, but he immediately answered himself, saying, "I'm 6 years old and my name is Faye." At that moment, Shur finally understood whenever Joe saw blood, he mentally reverted to the moment his parents died. With tears in his eyes, he recalled the car accident that took his parents away when he was 6. To comfort him, Shur reassured him, saying, "I won't leave you." The two then made a pinky promise. However, by the next morning, Joe was back to normal. Realizing what had happened the night before, he felt extremely embarrassed. He refused to talk to Shur about it, pretending as if nothing had happened. Later, the villagers gathered to send them off. As they flew kites, they sat on a tractor and left the village, heading back to the city. Meanwhile, back in the city, Jiang was working hard to improve his swimming skills. He later invited Sasha for lunch, but she was busy with work. Not wanting her to skip meals, he brought lunch to her office. Seeing them together, the staff began gossiping, and their next target became Jiang and Sasha as a potential couple. However, Sasha firmly told Jiang never to bring lunch to her office again, as she didn't want people gossiping about them. Meanwhile, Shur and Joe returned from their village trip. Shur reported everything to Grandpa, explaining what she had observed about Joe's condition. She told him that Joe had symptoms of a split personality disorder, which was triggered by his trauma. Hearing this, Grandpa made a firm decision. He arranged for Shur to move into Joe's house to take care of him. When Joe saw this, he was completely shocked. He immediately confronted Shur, saying, "Didn't you say you didn't want a big house? Why are you moving in now?" Shur calmly explained, "I'm only here to treat you. This was Grandpa's order, and don't worry, I didn't tell him about your condition." Even though Joe was already frustrated, now he had to deal with Shur at home too, which made him even more annoyed. And, as expected, Shur immediately turned his life upside down. The next morning, she banged pots and pans loudly, forcing him to wake up early. Then she dragged him outside for exercise, making him run laps until he was completely exhausted. After that, she forced him into an intense workout session, leaving him sore all over. Just as he tried to relax on the couch, Shur ordered him to take a shower and change clothes. Frustrated, Joe suddenly remembered that he was the company president. With a smug expression, he walked out of the bathroom wearing only a towel. Shur, seeing this, immediately covered her eyes and scolded him, saying, "Put some clothes on." Joe then smirked and said, "I walk around like this at home all the time. If you don't like it, leave." Shur threatened to open her eyes, and when she actually did, she screamed and covered her face again. After breakfast, Joe sat down with his laptop to work, but Shur kept reorganizing the house, making loud noises. She moved things around with so much force that Joe's back started hurting. Frustrated, he snapped at her, saying, "Did I offend you in my past life? Why are you torturing me now?" Shur ignored him, instead giving him a glass of warm water, reminding him to stay hydrated. Later that night, Joe was still working late, but suddenly the house lights went out. Annoyed, he went to check, only to find Shur standing there smugly. She told him, "You shouldn't stay up late. I've written a fitness schedule for you starting today. You must follow it." With no choice, Joe went to bed early. The next day at the office, he discussed another water plant project, while Shur requested some old medical books from the village. She started reading them at the office, hoping to find a way to fully cure Joe's condition. Later, as she scrolled through her phone, she found an old photo of him, lost in thought. Just then, his secretary and their gossiping group arrived. As Sher was trying to send some photos via Bluetooth, she accidentally sent them to Joe's phone because their devices got connected. Furious, Joe immediately called her into his office, glaring at her. He smugly asked, "Are you so obsessed with my beauty that you secretly took my photos? Is that why you moved into my house just to get my attention?" Annoyed, Sher scoffed, saying, "What nonsense, I have no interest in you." Joe smirked. "Stop lying. You clearly took these pictures to admire me later. Now delete them." She refused, saying, "I wasn't taking pictures of you. You just happened to be in the frame while I was capturing something else. But don't worry, I'll crop you out." Joe wasn't convinced, demanding, "Just delete them now." As he tried to snatch her phone, they ended up too close to each other, staring into each other's eyes. Just then, Jitian walked in, witnessing the intimate moment. Without saying much, she turned around and left, mumbling, "I guess I came at the wrong time." As she walked away, Joe panicked, trying to explain, "Wait, it's not what you think." But Jitian didn't stop, simply saying, "There's no need to explain, I understand everything now." She then stormed off, leaving Joe standing there deep in thought. After she left, Sher teasingly asked, "So, is this the end of your single life?" Joe snapped, "Are you crazy? How could I ever fall for a girl like you?" Shuri smirked. "Oh, I can already see it. And trust me, the entire office thinks there's something going on between us." Later, Joe prepared for an important meeting about the water plant project. That night, he tried to relax by watching TV, but Shuri stood right in front of the screen, blocking his view. Annoyed, he demanded, "Move!" But Shuri grinned, saying, "I found the perfect treatment for your phobia, acupuncture." Before he could react, she started jabbing needles into him. Joe yelped in pain, yelling, "What the hell are you doing?" Desperate to escape, he rushed to his room and slammed the door shut, shouting, "I'm the boss! How is she the one ordering me around in my own house?" Suddenly, he felt extremely drowsy. Unbeknownst to him, Sher had lit a special incensione that instantly put people to sleep. Meanwhile, the next day, Joe met with Mr. Wren, a key investor in the water plant operation. However, Sher noticed something suspicious. When Mr. Wren slightly touched Joe's secretary, she sensed something was off. Before she could react, Joe called her into the meeting. After the meeting, Sher confronted Joe in his office, demanding, "Why did you agree to work with Mr. Wren?" Joe, confused, asked, "What's wrong with him?" Sher clenched her fists, saying, "He's not a good man, I don't trust him." She didn't mention the inappropriate way he looked at her, but Joe brushed off her concerns, saying, "You're overreacting. No one is looking at you like that." Still, Sher was determined, insisting, "At least do some background research on him." Joe rolled his eyes, saying, "Relax, I'll look into it." Frustrated, Sher muttered, "How did someone like you become a president?" Hearing this, Joe felt a sharp sting to his pride, snapping, "I don't care what you think. I'm going through with this deal no matter what." Shuri, having no solid proof, had no choice but to leave angrily. However, she secretly began investigating Mr. Wren. Soon enough, she overheard him talking on the phone, flirting with another woman, despite being married. Realizing he was cheating on his wife, she decided to get proof. Meanwhile, Joe also started having doubts. He asked his assistant to investigate Mr. Wren's personal life. At the same time, Sher followed Mr. Wren, secretly tailing him on a security guard's scooter. She soon caught him meeting another woman in secret, taking photos as evidence. Unfortunately, Mr. Wren's bodyguard spotted her and chased after her. Right when things got dangerous, Joe suddenly arrived in his car, pulling Sher inside just in time. Furious, he scolded her, saying, "Stay out of this, you could have ruined the entire deal." Feeling frustrated, Sher became silent, realizing that Joe was still prioritizing the project over the truth. Later, at home, Joe noticed how unusually quiet Sher was. Raising an eyebrow, he asked, "You didn't bring me my medicine today?" Sher, clearly annoyed, replied, "Oh? But you don't even like my medicine, right? And it's not like you like having me around either." Realizing she was truly upset, Joe hesitated, then quietly said, "Make it for me." Sher, surprised, blinked and asked, "What?" Still avoiding eye contact, Joe mumbled, "Make me the medicine." Smiling to herself, Sher went up to the terrace to prepare it. Sher started preparing medicine for Joe, but at the same time, she was thinking about how to convince him that Mr. Wren was dangerous. However, Joe tried reasoning with her, saying, "There's no point in interfering in Mr. Wren's personal life. We only care about the water plant deal, not his affairs." After giving her a long lecture on morality and business ethics, he walked away, leaving Shi frustrated and upset. Later, Mr. Ren arrived at the company to pick up Shi, but instead he found Ji Tian wearing sunglasses and a hat, trying to stay unnoticed. Zhou, confused, asked, "Why are you hiding like this?" Ji Tian's real intention was to avoid being seen with him, but instead of saying that outright, she played it off as if she just wanted to meet him in private. Ziren, ever the loyal brother, immediately backed up Zhou's assumption, saying, "Yes, that's exactly what she meant, brother." Later, Ji Tian had dinner with Ziran, where she vented about Zhou and complained about everything that had happened. She even shared the details about Shi moving into Zhou's house, clearly frustrated. Ziran, trying to cheer her up, jokingly said, "Then maybe I should visit your place often to keep you company." Meanwhile, Shi secretly sneaked into Mr. Ren's water plant, determined to find proof against him. Back at the office, Zhou was waiting for Shi to return. As time passed, he became more and more impatient, eventually calling her phone, but she didn't pick up. Inside the water plant, Shi wandered around, discovering that it was filthy and poorly maintained. There was garbage everywhere, and the entire place reeked of pollution. Realizing this was her chance to gather evidence, she took out her phone and started clicking photos. Unfortunately, one of the security guards spotted her. Before she could react, he snatched her phone and smashed it on the ground, breaking it into pieces. However, Shi was smart. She had a backup phone hidden on her. She quickly escaped, managing to hold on to the important photos she had taken. Back at the office, Zhou was in an important meeting where he officially selected an Indian village as the location for their new water plant project. When Shi arrived, she was thrilled to hear this news. She immediately apologized for doubting him earlier and asked, "Why did you suddenly change your decision?" Zhou smirked, saying, "I did my own investigation. I found out everything: Mr. Ren's fraud, the pollution from his water plant, and all his shady business practices." Hearing this, Shi's face lit up with happiness. Meanwhile, Mr. Ren was furious, threatening to sue the company for backing out of the deal. However, Zhou remained calm, saying, "Actually, if anyone's getting sued, it's you." Moments later, officials arrived to shut down Mr. Ren's water plant, having received a legal complaint about its environmental violations. As Ren panicked, Zhou and Shi watched in satisfaction. That night, she was busy on her phone, looking up something. Curious, Zhou asked what she was doing, but she refused to tell him. The next morning, Shi got ready early, preparing to go out with Ziran. Zhou noticed this immediately. Right then, Ziran arrived, carrying breakfast, but he only brought food for Shi, not for Zhou. When Ziran and Shi sat down to eat, Zhou just stared at them in disbelief. Feeling slightly guilty, Shi quickly told him, "I made dumplings for you last night. They're in the fridge if you want to eat." Zhou frowned, then asked, "Where are you two going?" Ziran grinned, "We're going to the amusement park. We're riding roller coasters today." Zhou's expression darkened, and he muttered, "Just the two of you?" It was already quite late, and Shi still hadn't returned home. This made Zhou feel uneasy. He thought about messaging her, but hesitated, questioning himself. Why am I even worried about her? To cover up his own concern, he muttered, "I'm not waiting for her." Still, he couldn't stop thinking about where she was, so he quickly grabbed a book and pretended to read. However, he had accidentally picked it up, upside down. Shi entered at that moment and noticed it immediately. Smirking, she chose to ignore it and started looking at the photos on her phone. She excitedly told Zhou all about her day with Ziran, mentioning how they had fun on the roller coasters. "He was scared, but I protected him," she added with a proud smile. Hearing this, Zhou's mood soured. He coldly asked, "If he was scared, why didn't you stop him from riding in the first place?" Shi casually replied, "I was with him the whole time, so don't worry, he's fine." Then, she praised Ziran a little, causing Zhou's face to visibly twitch in irritation. With a serious expression, he said, "You're a spokesperson for the Farron Group, my spokesperson. How can you waste your time on useless outings?" He added, "Did you forget what I taught you?" Shi blinked and asked, "You taught me something?" Annoyed, Zhou immediately handed her a stack of business books, ordering, "Read these. You're not allowed to leave the company without my permission anymore. Study them thoroughly." Shi, oddly happy, accepted the challenge, grinning. "So you finally recognize my value, huh? I'll make sure to master everything in these books." Zhou scoffed, "I'll check on your progress." Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Jiang's parents, his uncle and aunt, were plotting. They wanted to secure control over the company, so they planned to force Jiang into marriage, hoping that having children quickly would make Grandpa favor him. They even hired a professional actress to pretend to be his fiancée, intending to stage a fake engagement scene. However, Jiang was completely against the idea. He still wanted to pursue his athletic career and had zero interest in an arranged marriage. After being emotionally blackmailed and pressured, he reluctantly agreed to attend the setup. But once there, he couldn't go through with the act and immediately exposed the lie, telling everyone, "I don't even know this woman. My parents brought her here without my consent." He even bluntly stated, "Joe is far more capable than I am. You should be grooming him as the heir, not me." With that, he walked away, leaving his parents embarrassed and humiliated. Later, Jiang made up his mind if he ever married, it would only be Shasha. However, Shasha saw things differently. She understood that their relationship had no future and warned Jiang to stop chasing her, telling him, "Your parents will never accept me. I'm on their rival business team. Forget about me and find someone else." Then, she left him standing there, heartbroken. Determined, Jiang went home and told his mother, "I like someone." However, he didn't reveal the name directly. Still, his mother quickly figured it out, realizing he was talking about Shasha. But instead of supporting him, she flatly rejected the idea. Meanwhile, Joe returned home from work and, for some reason, started dancing in his living room. It was such a ridiculous sight that Shur, who had just walked in, struggled to hold back her laughter. The moment Joe noticed her, he froze, horrified that she had seen him. Immediately, he snapped at her, "Forget what you saw! Don't tell anyone!" Unable to contain herself any longer, Shur burst into laughter. Embarrassed, Joe ran away. Later that night, Jiang went drinking with his friends, venting about his love life struggles. Drunk and emotional, he ranted, "The girl I like rejected me, my parents are forcing me into marriage, and my entire life has been one big comparison to Joe. No matter what I do, they always want me to be like him. He never wanted to inherit the business, nor did he have any interest in running the company. Instead, he was grateful that Joe had taken on that responsibility, allowing him to pursue his own dreams." At some point during the night, he even called Ziran, asking him to join in the drinking session. The next morning, all three brothers, Joe, Jiang, and Ziran, woke up completely hungover. None of them remembered anything from the night before. Still groggy, Jiang asked them, "What happened last night?" Before anyone could answer, they freshened up and sat down for breakfast. That's when Ziran suddenly smirked, recalling something from the previous night. He said, "You got completely wasted. At one point, you even started stripping and causing chaos." Joe, stunned, asked, "Do you have proof?" Ziran grinned mischievously. "I do, and I'll send you the video, but only on one condition." Joe, suspicious, asked, "What's the condition?" Ziran smirked. "Let's play a game. If you lose, I'll send it to everyone." The three ended up having a fun, chaotic game session, full of laughter and teasing. Eventually, Joe left for the office, still a bit shaken from the events of the night before. As he arrived, he noticed Shur was unusually quiet, which made him wonder, what is she planning now? Young felt completely motivated. A while later, chaos erupted in the office. Ji Qing had returned. The secretary and her group immediately panicked and tried to escape, remembering how Ji Qing had tormented them when they last visited her in the hospital. Ji Qing, however, coldly smirked and told Shur that she had come today purely for business matters. She had brought up a special new energy drink and even found a male spokesperson for the campaign, a famous retired swimmer named Yang. Despite retiring, Yang remained extremely popular, making him the perfect face for the campaign. But there was one small problem. Ji Qing had not been able to establish any direct contact with Yang yet. Since Yang was a professional swimmer, Joe had an idea he could use Yang as a connection. However, Jiang wasn't thrilled about the idea, but he still promised to bring back useful information about Yang the next day. Since there was nothing more to discuss, Jiang left, but he and Yang ended up drinking together, chatting late into the night. And just like the last time, Jiang woke up completely naked, but this time, he even had a strange mark on his chest. Horrified, he immediately called his friend, asking him to help him get in contact with Yang again. Later, when his friend invited him for swim practice, Yang noticed Jiang staring at his chest, clearly remembering the mark from before. Suspicious, Yang refused to swim, claiming he needed to rest, something he had never done before. This only shocked his friend further. Meanwhile, back at the office, Ji Qing dropped another bombshell. She announced that she would be working permanently in the company from now on. She demanded that her office be as close as possible to Zhou's, but there was a problem. Xi's office was right next to Zhou's. To fix this, Ji Qing had Zhou's assistant fired and offered to make Shi her new assistant instead. However, Zhou immediately refused, saying, "I won't give you my assistant, but I'll arrange someone else for you." Ji Qing wasn't happy with that answer. She insisted on taking Zhou's assistant, but he firmly declined again. At this point, Shi started hearing strange office rumors. It turned out that many people in the company were gossiping about her, Zhou, and Ji Qing, believing they were involved in some kind of love triangle. When Ji Qing heard about these rumors, she was furious. Feeling embarrassed and irritated, she stormed out of the office, leaving the secretary gang in fear. They worried that this whole situation was about to turn even more toxic. Meanwhile, Zhou and Shi were trying to clear up some misunderstandings, but in the process they accidentally ended up very close to each other. For a brief moment, both froze, clearly flustered. The next day, Jiang arrived at the office in a full suit, proudly announcing that he had contacted Yang and that Yang would be visiting the office tomorrow for a meeting. Ji Qing thanked him, but Jiang wasn't done yet. Spotting Ziran nearby, Jiang rushed over and whispered, "I think I impressed her, but I want to impress her even more. Teach me how to look smart." Ziran sighed. "You need to be more strategic. Use your brain. Think ahead." Jiang nodded eagerly. "Okay, from now on, teach me something smart every day." That same night, Jiang grabbed a glass of milk and tried to train his brain by watching Detective Conan comics. Ziran chuckled. "Yeah, perfect plan." Meanwhile, at home, Shi finished checking on Zhou's health and announced, "You're completely healed. You don't need any more medicine. Just maintain your diet and exercise." However, she recommended learning a few kung fu techniques to help keep his body strong. Zhou agreed immediately, and the two began a light sparring session. At first, Shi went easy on him, but Zhou struggled to keep up. Meanwhile, Ji Qing was also getting updates about Yang's arrival, and she secretly hoped that she could set herself up with him. However, when her friends suggested setting her up with Yang, Ji Qing immediately refused. "I don't need any matchmaking." Instead, she decided to spend time with Yang first and see if he was worthy of her attention. At the same time, Shi realized she didn't know much about Yang, so she began asking around about him. Just as she was gathering information, Ji Qing suddenly walked in. Yang called Shi over, asking if she was also interested in swimming, as everyone already knew about him. A little later, Yang arrived at the office, and the meeting began. However, Yang was hesitant about signing the endorsement deal. He wanted to focus on his swimming, and he had personal reasons for not wanting to do it. Still, after some convincing, Shi managed to persuade him. Yang and Shi signed the contract. That evening, Jiang visited Zhou's house, where Shi couldn't stop praising his looks, his personality, his thinking, his ideology. She kept going on and on. Listening to all this, Zhou started feeling jealous but didn't say anything. The next day, the endorsement shoot began at the swimming pool. During the preparations, Shi accidentally slipped and fell into the water. Without thinking, Zhou immediately jumped into the pool to save her, even though he didn't know how to swim. He was clearly worried about Shi, and she noticed it too. Afterward, Ziran suspiciously asked Zhou, "Do you like Shi? You can't even swim, yet you jumped in without hesitation." Zhou quickly denied it, saying, "How could I like a girl like her?" Later at home, Zhou was still annoyed, but also secretly worried about Shi. Shi, noticing this, brought him ginger soup, thanking him for saving her. Instead of showing gratitude, Zhou got angry, scolding her. "You can't even swim. How will you do an endorsement shoot in the water?" Shi reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, Yang will teach me. I learned very quickly." Hearing Yang's name again, Zhou became irritated and refused to let her meet him. Shi replied, "Your grandfather and you have already done so much for me. I don't need any more favors. Besides, if I break the contract, it could cause trouble with Ji Qing. I'll learn to swim quickly." She then went to call Yang. Meanwhile, it was revealed that the real reason Yang had refused the endorsement initially was because of a dislocated bone in his arm. That was also why he had retired so young. The next morning, Shur was getting ready when Joe asked her where she was going. Shar replied, "I'm going for some warm-up exercises before learning to swim." Hearing this, Joe suddenly insisted on going with her. He hurried off to change into his workout clothes, showing up in a ridiculous jogging suit. Even Zirin couldn't hold back his laughter. Still, Joe dragged Zirin along, determined to keep an eye on Shur. Unfortunately, Joe was completely exhausted by the time they finished running, struggling to keep up. Back at the office, Ji Qing scolded Joe for recklessly jumping into the pool, especially when he didn't know how to swim. She asked him directly, "If it had been me instead of Shur, would you have jumped in to save me?" Joe calmly replied, "There were professional swimmers around, so nothing would have happened to you." Hearing this, Ji Qing stormed off angrily. Later in his office, Joe called Shur over and scolded her again, saying, "You don't even know how to swim, yet you signed the contract." Shur reassured him, saying, "I already spoke to Yang. He will teach me and I'll learn quickly." Ji Qing, overhearing this, came up with a plan to get rid of Shur. She pretended to support Shur and encouraged her to start swimming lessons with Yang immediately. Ji Qing even approved a leave of absence for Shur so she could focus on learning. When Joe found out about this, he was furious. He immediately drove to the swimming club, but instead of confronting them, he hid and watched from a distance. He saw Yang and Shur practicing various swimming movements together, getting physically close. Irritated, Joe kept spamming Shur with messages, but she only replied with short, "okay" messages. This made Joe even angrier. When Yang noticed Joe nearby, he asked Shur if she wanted to take a break. Joe, trying to play it cool, pretended he had just arrived and wasn't spying on them. However, he continued messaging Shur, trying to distract her. Shur, ignoring him, focused on her training. Yang then told her, "This is just the beginning. You still need more practice." Joe, refusing to leave her alone with Yang, asked Zirin for help. He wanted to find a way to interrupt their training and get Shur away from Yang. Joe quickly changed into swim gear and returned. Joe was waiting at home, hungry and impatient, expecting Shur to return. When the doorbell rang, he rushed to open it, only to find Ziran standing there instead. Ziran continued teasing him about Shur and Yang's photo shoot, saying, "Look at them. They make such a great couple. Everyone loved their pictures." Joe, clearly irritated, tried to ignore Ziran. Meanwhile, she and Yang finished their photo shoot. As they were wrapping up, Yang invited Shur to dinner. Back at home, Joe checked his phone, seeing more and more pictures from the photo shoot. He couldn't take it anymore. His mind was racing with wild imaginations of Shur and Yang together. He kept thinking, "Why do I even care? It's not like I like her." Still, he couldn't shake the frustration off. With Shur running late, his mood only worsened. He accidentally kissed her forehead instead. Shai, completely flustered, quickly pulled away and ran off, leaving Joe standing there, a bit embarrassed, but also amused. The next day at the office, Shur avoided Joe as much as possible, her heart still racing from the previous night. Meanwhile, Zirin noticed something was off and started teasing Joe, saying, "You look extra happy today. Something happened, didn't it?" Joe, trying to act normal, denied everything, but his face betrayed him. Back at her desk, Shur was lost in thought, recalling Joe's confession and how he told her, "You can never leave me." She shook her head, trying to focus on work, but the memory kept replaying in her mind. Later that evening, Joe texted Shur, saying, "Let's have dinner together." Shur, still shy about what had happened, hesitated before replying with a simple, "Okay." She reflexively slaps him, and he runs after her, shouting, "You're my girlfriend." The next morning, both of them are extremely excited and happy. Joe is so overjoyed that he starts dancing, and just then Shur arrives to wake him up. She sees him dancing again, and when he notices her, he gets embarrassed and hides under the blanket. A little later, Joe comes out blushing. He tries to help Shur, but she says there's no need and reassures him, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your dance." Shur makes breakfast, and while eating, she asks him again if he was serious yesterday. Joe confidently replies, "Of course." Shur then asks why he likes her. He responds, "Because you're very strong." Hearing this, she gets a little surprised. Joe continues, "I also like how much you love food. You always finish everything on your plate." Shur asks, "That's it? Not because I'm cute or pretty?" Joe, blushing slightly, replies, "That's also one of the most important reasons." Sure starts blushing, and they continue eating. Afterward, they arrive at the office, walking like a couple in love. Joe tells Sure, no one in the office should know we are a couple. There's a strict no dating policy. I've even fired employees for breaking this rule. Sure teases him. Then will you fire me too? Joe quickly says, how could I do that? He continues, we just need to act normal at work. We'll do all the couple things outside the office. Sure curiously asks, what do normal couples do on dates? Joe confidently replies, I'll teach you everything. At the office, Joe cancels some meetings and starts searching online. What should couples do when they start dating? The search results suggest writing love poems. Joe, determined, begins writing a poem for Sure. Sure comes to discuss their new project, but Joe is too focused on his writing and asks her to leave. She pretends to walk away, but secretly watches him. Later, after finishing the poem, Joe angrily takes Sure to his office and scolds her in front of everyone. People start wondering what's going on between them. Inside the office, Joe gives Sure the poem and asks her to read it. After reading it, Sure, confused, says, okay, I read it. Can I go now? Joe gets frustrated, thinking, why doesn't she understand my feelings? He searches online again. How do you express love to your partner? This time, the answer suggests creating a romantic atmosphere. Meanwhile, in the office, someone leaves a note on Sure's desk, asking her to meet them on the terrace. Curious, she asks the secretary gang about it, but they have no idea. They start guessing, could it be a secret admirer? Sure goes to check, with the gang secretly following her to see what happens. It turns out that the note was just a chance for someone to befriend her. The person tells Shuri they want to be besties as she has no close friends to talk to, go out with, or shop with. They take her on a shopping spree, but Shuri doesn't really want anything. The person makes her promise that whenever they invite her, she will hang out with them. Back at the office, Joe gets annoyed again and keeps Shuri for overtime. He hands her a file and asks her to work on it. When she asks for help, he refuses. The file contains a map, and at the end of the day, Joe tells her to meet him so they can walk home together. They both work late. Since Shur hasn't left yet, Joe checks on her and insists she go home, but Shur wants to finish her work first. Joe gets frustrated and demands she wrap up and leave. As they walk home together, Joe invites her to dinner. They meet at a specified place, holding hands and enjoying the night. Suddenly, a child runs past them, making them stumble and end up close together. They lock eyes, standing still for a moment before continuing their walk. Then John appears in front of them. Seeing him, Shur quickly twists Joe's arm and pretends to be giving him an exercise routine. John, suspicious, asks, "What are you two doing out so late?" Shur replies, "I was just making Joe do some exercises." John raises an eyebrow. "Really? What are you doing here at this time?" John casually explains, "Oh, my house is nearby. I just went out for a jog." He then suggests they jog together, but Shur, making an excuse about being late, drags Joe away. Meanwhile, Yang has been learning ways to impress girls from his friend. Step 1, speak sweetly and compliment her a lot. He tries this on Shor, but she doesn't react much. Step 2, offer her a drink. Shar refuses, assuring him, "Don't worry, I won't take advantage of you." Step 3, show off strength. Yang removes his shirt, flexing his muscles and talking about his gym routine. Shur, confused, wonders what he's trying to prove. Joe, meanwhile, searches online for ways to create a romantic atmosphere. He comes up with the idea of watching a horror movie together. Later, he excitedly invites Shur to watch one, hoping to get close to her. During the movie, Joe keeps inching closer to her, waiting for the right moment. But Shur, instead of getting scared, starts analyzing the movie logically. "This is nonsense! Ghosts don't even exist!" she exclaims, unimpressed. Joe's plan to scare her into clinging to him completely fails. Instead, he pretends to be scared himself. Shur, rather than comforting him, starts giving him a logical explanation of why ghosts aren't real. Frustrated, Joe makes an excuse and says, "Let's go to the bedroom," hoping to create a romantic moment. She goes to sleep, marking the start of the next day at the office. In the office, Shashan effortlessly seals a deal with her charm, impressing everyone. She tells Shar that girls who show weakness are often more popular among men. To demonstrate, she struggles to open a bottle cap, pretending she lacks strength. Joe, watching, comments, "You can lift 2 heavy buckets with both hands. How is it that you suddenly can't open a bottle? Do you have a fever or something?" Annoyed by his questions, she storms off. Meanwhile, Shur notices Shashan flirting with Kochi, making Jitu blush and quickly leave the scene. Later, she brings medicine for Joe, but his odd behavior catches her attention. Noticing his strange walking and hesitant attitude, Joe gets suspicious. "What's wrong with you today?" he asks, refusing to take his medicine. Annoyed that none of her plans are working, she storms off again. Shari later sees Shashan applying makeup and looking stunning, which sparks an idea. She heads out to buy makeup but is shocked by the prices. Instead, she buys Johnson's baby powder in a red fruit, makes juice out of it, drinks some, and uses the rest for makeup. Excited to surprise Joe, she calls him to meet her. When Joe sees her, he gets startled because she looks completely different, dressed like a traditionally feminine girl. Seeing his reaction, Shur gets upset. "Are you scared of me now?" she asks. She explains, "I've trained since childhood to be strong, and I thought being strong was enough, but today, I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. I tried dressing up like a normal girl, but even this, you don't like. You're even scared of me now." Joe gently wipes her tears and reassures her. "You don't have to prove anything. I like you just as you are. You don't need to change for me." Overwhelmed, Shur leans in to kiss him, and he kisses her back. Meanwhile, Yang gets advice from a friend. "If you want her to know she's special to you, give her something that holds deep meaning for you." Following the advice, Yang gifts Shur his first ever swimming suit, the one he wore when he won his first swimming competition as a child. Shur, seeing the gift, becomes emotional and leaves without saying much. Later, as Joe and Shur return home, they walk hand in hand, neither willing to let go. Before entering the room, Joe casually asks, "Do you want to sleep in my room?" Shur, shocked, pushes him back and, blushing, rushes into her own room. The next day, a conversation about a contract arises. Washington arrives, causing a stir, and suddenly, Shur is invited to a party. Joe approaches her after work and suggests they go home together. Shur tells him about the party, but it turns out that Shashan didn't invite Joe. Suspicious, Shur tries to guess why, making Joe slightly embarrassed as he leaves. That night, the party is in full swing. More guys, including Chi and others, join in and they all start playing cards. When Shur returns home, she excitedly tells Joe how much fun she had. However, Joe seems a bit upset. Feeling embarrassed, he goes to sleep. Later, an invitation is sent out again for another gathering, but this time, Joe is included. She invites everyone again, and Shur is also expected to attend. However, upon reaching the party, she realizes that Shur isn't there. She probably got caught up in work, she thinks. In reality, she had deliberately kept the party a secret from Shur because she only wanted to spend time with Joe alone. Joe, using the excuse of feeding his cat, leaves the party early and returns home, only to find Shur already asleep. Thus, another evening is wasted. The next day, Shashan invites everyone once more. This time everyone is hesitant because they have attended too many gatherings in a row, but since rejecting Shashan wasn't an option, they all show up. Yang also joins, and Shashan strategically seats him next to Shur, hoping to stir things up again, unaware that Shur had already rejected him. Despite Joe's warnings, Chi secretly takes a photo of Yang and Shur and sends it to Joe, who immediately rushes over to the party. Upon arriving, he smoothly moves Yang aside and takes the seat next to Shur. Shashan, unwilling to give up, presses herself against Joe from the other side. When questioned, Joe casually explains, "I was passing by and thought I'd treat everyone to a party." With that, Shashan's plan is foiled again. The next day, she attempts another gathering, but this time everyone is too exhausted from partying and finds excuses to avoid it. This turns out to be a blessing for Shur, as she finally gets quality time with Joe. Meanwhile, the company arranges a championship event organized by an alumnus from Joe's university. Joe, taking it as a matter of pride, accepts the challenge and encourages his employees to participate. "If we win," he announces, "I'll double everyone's bonus this month." He appoints Shur as the team captain. Training begins immediately, with Iran and John joining in. Sakshia threatens Iran. "If you run too slow on the competition day, I'll kill you." With full enthusiasm, everyone starts their practice. Meanwhile, Shashan meets with Ingqing as they are working on a major project together. However, Ingqing has ulterior motives. "You'll never have Joe," he tells her, "because he likes Shar. Mark my words. He will leave you again just like he did 3 years ago. So why don't we team up and teach him a lesson?" Furious, Shashan throws water on him, and Ingqing storms out. Joe later talks to her about the project. She reassures him, this project won't harm the company. Meanwhile, at a gathering with her friends, Shi messages Yang to pick her up. Yang arrives promptly and takes her to her hotel room. Drunk again, she starts her usual antics. She asks Yang, do you think I should take off my makeup before sleeping? Yang, slightly puzzled, says, of course, however, she can't find her makeup remover and throws a tantrum. Yang, not wanting to deal with the chaos, calls his friend to fetch some makeup remover. He then helps her remove it. The next morning, she wakes up to find him bringing her coffee. Shashan becomes anxious, realizing that Yang has seen her without makeup. Yang reassures her, you look the same, there's no difference. Shashan, however, is flustered. She starts making fun of him, recalling how he wasn't good at sports back in college. She declares that she will defeat Mr. Joth, and that her main goal in the competition is to defeat Shi. In the previous match, Shi had beaten Jin Chung, and now Jin Chang wants revenge. The race begins, and Joe is at the second checkpoint. While they continue their playful banter, both of them run excellently. At the third checkpoint, Shi and Jin Chang face off. Jin Chang claims she will win the match, but Shi confidently states that she won't let that happen. As the race progresses, Bhaskar faints, leaving Shi and Jin Chung to compete against each other fiercely. Jin Chang tries to push Shi multiple times, but Shi refuses to retaliate, maintaining her composure. At the final checkpoint, Shi passes the baton, and the last leg of the race begins. Joe, who hadn't been running at full speed before, suddenly starts sprinting with all his strength, determined to secure victory for his team and prove himself. He is the first to touch the finish line, leading the Farron group to victory. In the midst of the celebration, Joe publicly announces in front of everyone that he is dating Shi and that she is his girlfriend. Iran is disheartened, as he also has feelings for Shi. However, no one else is surprised. Most of the staff, including Joe's secretary and Yang, already had suspicions and had nearly confirmed the relationship. Later, Joe takes Shi out for a celebratory treat. Meanwhile, Iran is dealing with a broken heart and feeling devastated, ends up in the hospital after drinking excessively. Finally, Shi fully accepts her love for Joe, indirectly confessing her feelings to him. Hearing this, Joe is overjoyed. Later that night, after drinking too much, Joe becomes too intoxicated, and Shi has to carry him home. She takes him to the shower to sober him up, where a romantic atmosphere builds between them. Caught up in the moment, they start getting closer, but Shi, overwhelmed with shyness, runs away. That night, Joe dreams of their wedding, while Shi reminisces about their intimate moment and blushes. The next day at the office, their romance continues. Before taking his medicine, Joe demands a kiss from Shi, turning it into their new routine. Just as things heat up between them, Krishy suddenly appears, interrupting the moment. Annoyed at being disturbed, Joe sighs and apologizes for ruining their mood. Shi tries to maintain her composure, but Joe boldly asserts, "This is my company, my office, and she is my girlfriend. I can do whatever I want." He reaches out to hold Shi's hand, but she is too busy blushing. Seeing this, Joe himself takes her hand and confidently declares, "She is my girlfriend." Determined, he decides to inform Grandpa about their relationship. Meanwhile, Jin Cheng plans to sell her shares in Farran Group and take revenge. In exchange, he tells her that he will give her project ownership, allowing her to press forward. Otherwise, Jicheng will have no chance left. She leaves. Meanwhile, Divya and Joe arrive at Grandpa's place, just about to reveal their relationship. However, before Joe can speak, Jiang unexpectedly announces his own relationship first. Grandpa is overjoyed by this news, and to celebrate, he organizes a family gathering. Because of this, Joe and Shi don't get a chance to speak. The next day at the office, Jicheng sees Joe and Shi together and rage fills her. Without hesitation, she calls Injun and accepts his offer. Later, Injun meets up with her because he wants to confirm whether Shi and Joe's relationship is serious. After hearing their story, he invites Shi to his house. There, Shi watches his past performances on TV. She also finds an album filled with photos of him and Joe. During dinner, Injun makes a love confession to Shi, telling her that he fell in love with her at first sight. He explains that he never shared his feelings before, and after saying all this, he emotionally embraces her one last time. After Shi leaves, an evil smirk appears on his face, hinting at a hidden agenda. Meanwhile, Iran is deeply saddened and reflects on everything that happened. We also see that Injun has targeted Shi for a reason yet to be revealed. When Shuri arrives home, she finds Sha and Yang visiting. Both couples spend a wonderful time together, and later, the two brothers perform a dance for their girlfriends. Joe seems genuinely happy, which makes Iran emotional. Iran promises to always support Joe, as he has been through a lot and finally found his happiness. Later, the guests leave, and Joe resumes his usual affectionate teasing. Shur, blushing, runs away once again. However, she keeps thinking about Iran's words, feeling troubled. The next day, her thoughts continue to haunt her, making her uneasy. That evening, they prepare dinner together for Grandpa's arrival. Joe, on the other hand, brings a camera with him, but what he intends to do with it remains a mystery. After dinner, they spend time together before Joe heads back home. The next day at the office, Shur overhears a conversation between Joe's secretary and Yang. They talk about how, back in college, two best friends fell in love with the same person. Their friendship shattered because of love, leading to a dangerous conflict between them. However, when Selena refused to choose either of them, the two friends eventually reconciled. Hearing this, Shur starts worrying that a similar conflict might arise between Joe and Iran because of her. Shortly after, Iran calls her, asking to meet. Meanwhile, Joe, suspicious, secretly follows her. Once again, Iran puts on his emotional act, pretending to be extremely hurt by seeing Shur and Joe together. He claims that he is so devastated that he has to harm himself just to get Shur's attention. Deliberately, he reveals his injured hand, making Shur extremely worried. He then makes her promise not to tell Joe about his injury. Iran then coldly tells her to leave. As Shur walks away, an evil smirk appears on Iran's face. After all this, Shur finally decides that for the sake of both brothers, leaving Joe's life would be the best choice. She writes farewell notes and sticks them on everything in the house, then puts Joe's phone on silent mode. After giving him one last goodbye from afar, she gathers her belongings and steps out. Seeing her leave, Iran is overjoyed. It is then revealed that he has been overly possessive of his brother all along, never allowing anyone to get too close to him. That's why he even faked cutting his own hand. Meanwhile, Shur goes to the office one last time, bidding farewell to everyone and giving them advice for their problems. She tries to maintain her composure, but her sadness is evident. Shasha, noticing something is off, calls Joe, asking if he and Shur had an argument. However, Joe's phone is on silent and he is still asleep. This makes her even more suspicious. Just then, someone informs Joe that Shur had met Iran yesterday and had been upset ever since. Realizing something is wrong, Joe and his team rush to find her, but by the time they arrive, she has already left. Joe hurries home, hoping to find her, but she is nowhere to be seen. Instead, he finds her farewell notes scattered around, which confirms his worst fears. Desperate, he calls her, but she doesn't answer. Panicking, he alerts everyone, and soon the entire office is searching for Shur. Eventually, they find her, and everyone joins forces to stop her from leaving. When Joe arrives, the moment their eyes meet, they both instinctively run towards each other, unable to deny their love. Joe brings Shur back to the office, demanding to know the truth. Shuri finally reveals everything, how Iran had faked his injuries and manipulated the situation to keep them apart. She tells Joe that he never truly understood his brother, explaining how Iran had intercepted countless love letters from girls, burning them all. She reveals that Iran had secretly held on to all of Joe's friends' contact details to monitor his every move, ensuring no one ever got too close. Joe struggles to believe it, but Shur insists, providing proof. At that moment, Jang warns them that Iran plans to propose to Shur in front of everyone to trap her into marriage. Furious, Joe storms to the office terrace where Iran is already on one knee proposing to Shur. Before she can respond, Joe steps in, yelling at Iran and rejecting the proposal on her behalf. A heated argument erupts. Iran, now furious, accuses everyone of conspiring against him. "How could you betray me for this low-class village girl?" he shouts at Joe. "You chose her over me, over your own brother?" His words turn even harsher. "This girl is an uneducated nobody from a tiny village. She is nothing compared to you. How could she possibly be worthy of you? She's only after your money, and I was just trying to protect you." The truth about Iran's fake injury is exposed, leaving Shur in complete shock. Outraged, Joe raises his hand to slap Iran, but instead punches a wall in frustration. Disappointed beyond words, Joe tells Iran, You have let me down. Overcome with guilt and desperation, Iran suddenly takes a knife and cuts his own hand. But the moment he sees blood, he faints, instantly reverting to his 6-year-old mindset. At that moment, everyone realizes the shocking truth. Iran's deep psychological trauma has kept him mentally trapped in childhood. However, even in his childlike state, he recognizes only Shah and no one else. But Iran, still in denial, screams at Shah, "How could he forget me? I am his brother!" As his frustration boils over, he flees the scene. He returns home feeling deeply saddened, reminiscing about his childhood. He recalls how Joe always commented that the two of them loved each other and how he should understand and let them be happy. While he outwardly accepts this, his mind is scheming something else. The next morning, Joe regains consciousness and immediately seeks out Shah to apologize for everything that happened. Shah too realizes what's been going on. Meanwhile, the company is dealing with a major financial scandal involving stock manipulation. Joe starts visiting key figures, Jim, John, and his uncle and aunt, inviting them to attend the next shareholder meeting, promising a major surprise. Joe repeatedly tries to call Iran, but Iran ignores his calls. Iran is still furious at Joe for not telling him about his illness while confiding in Shah. Joe tries to reason with him, but Iran refuses to listen. "You always treated me like a weak little kid," Iran snaps. "You made every decision for me. You once said I was the closest person to you, yet you never trusted me with your biggest struggles." Joe responds, "I worked tirelessly for years to give you a good life, to make sure you never faced any problems." But Iran counters, "Did you ever ask me what I wanted? I wanted to work alongside you. I studied so hard just so I could be as qualified as you and stand by your side. I wanted us to solve every problem together, but instead you kept me behind you, never giving me a chance." Realizing his mistake, Joe apologizes, acknowledging that he failed to see that his younger brother had grown capable. Iran, still upset, says he needs time alone and leaves. After he's gone, Joe looks at a photo of Shah and quietly whispers an apology. He then sends an email to someone. The next day, Joe arrives at the office only to find chaos. The news of his condition has been leaked to the media. Dozens of articles have already been published about it, and a shareholder meeting has been scheduled without his approval. Shah accompanies Joe to the meeting, where all the shareholders, including influential figures like Chan, have already gathered. The room is filled with tension. The shareholders demand that Joe step down from his position as president. They don't even give him a chance to explain, as their decision seems final. Just then, Ron enters, taking advantage of the situation to insult Shah once again. "She doesn't belong here. She's not qualified to sit in this meeting." Ron scoffs. Joe tries to defend her, but in the heat of the moment, he accidentally sees blood triggering his condition. He collapses, unconscious. The meeting is thrown into chaos. His other personality, created as a defense mechanism against loneliness, finally disappears. When Joe regains consciousness, he learns from Jizo that Iran, along with some shareholders, has orchestrated a plan to vote him out and remove him as a director. Iran even leaked a video showing Joe's personality disorder to the media. He had secretly installed cameras in Joe's house, capturing footage that exposed his condition. Joe is left speechless, recalling memories of his younger brother. He remembers how Iran always saw him coming home exhausted from work and vowed to study hard to support him. Despite this, Iran is still furious about Shah, which leads him to speak ill of her once again. This time, their grandfather intervenes, slapping Iran and demanding that he reflect on his actions. Meanwhile, Joe isolates himself in his room for hours before finally emerging. He joins Shah in preparing a meal for the family. As they all sit down to eat, Joe drinks excessively, lost in thoughts of his brother's betrayal. Shah later returns and reassures everyone that they will help Joe recover. The next day, Chai and Zhang arrive with bizarre remedies to cure Joe. They try everything from showing him a red cloth to presenting him with animal blood, but nothing seems to work. They promise to return with a new plan the following day. Shah, however, promises to fight alongside Joe no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Iran visits Chi-Ching, asking her to vote in his favor at the upcoming board meeting. She agrees, but sets a condition: Joe must marry her and transfer all his shares to her. Joe refuses. Later, Joe catches Iran stealing important files related to fraud transactions. Iran manages to retrieve them from a locked cabinet successfully. On the eve of the board meeting, Shur encourages Joe, knowing that his final showdown with Iran is approaching. The next day, at the shareholder meeting, most of the board sides with Iran. However, Joe receives unexpected support from his uncle and aunt, whom he had spoken to earlier. They had realized that standing with Joe was in their best interest. Additionally, Young, who had convinced his parents to see the bigger picture, reminded them that as a family, it was their responsibility to correct Iran's mistakes. Returning to the present, Joe stands firm in the meeting. He openly reveals how witnessing his parents' accident traumatized him so deeply that it led to the creation of his alternate personality dot and officially register their marriage. However, just as they were about to exchange the marriage certificate, Shur suddenly hesitates. She recalls all the events that led up to this moment, realizing how much has changed in her life. Seeing her hesitation, Joe grows anxious. He gently takes her hand and asks, "Are you having second thoughts?" Shur takes a deep breath, looks into his eyes, and says, "No. I just want to make sure that we're both ready for this step." Joe smiles and reassures her, "I've never been more sure about anything in my life." With that, the marriage certificates are exchanged, and the two officially become husband and wife. The news spreads quickly, and their friends and colleagues celebrate the union. Joe and Shur's wedding is planned as a grand affair, attended by family F. The news spreads quickly, and their friends and colleagues celebrate the union. Joe and Shur's wedding is planned as a grand affair, attended by family, friends, and business associates. Meanwhile, Iran follows through on his promise to change. He moves away for self-reflection, focusing on becoming a better person. He sends Joe a message letting him know that one day he hopes to return as someone his brother can truly be proud of. As the festivities continue, the scene shifts to Joe's office, where a framed picture of his parents sits on his desk. It is clear that he has finally found peace, not only with his past, but with his future. The story ends with Joe and Shur embarking on their honeymoon, hand in hand, ready to start their new life together, to do so. But when they arrive, they realize that the certificate has already been torn apart. He gets scolded for it, but he calmly says, "If it bothers you so much, you can tear ours too." Shur is left speechless. A few days later, he talks about getting a duplicate copy of the marriage certificate. Instead, he collaborates with Shur to create a marriage contract, decorating it beautifully before gifting it to her. That evening, Joe finds himself missing Iran deeply, worrying about how he is doing. Shur comforts him, reminding him that Iran is strong and will be fine. 3 years later, the scene shifts to Iran, who is now practicing traditional medicine. While studying, he comes across Shur's old medical practice book and learns various treatment methods from it. One day, a woman rushes in carrying her unconscious child. Iran immediately performs treatment, successfully reviving the child. The relieved mother expresses her gratitude, making Iran feel deeply fulfilled. It is revealed that everyone's relationships have improved over the years. Iran stays connected with his loved ones, and even from a distance, they exchange letters and messages. Sometime later, Shur and Joe visit Iran's village. Upon arriving, an elderly woman recognizes Shur and excitedly praises her for bringing along such a handsome husband. Shur playfully teases Joe, who pretends to be indifferent but secretly enjoys the compliment. Finally, they meet Iran, who greets them warmly. He has changed and matured, truly finding his path in life. They share a heartfelt moment together, reminiscing about the past and looking forward to the future. And with that, the story concludes. Thank you for watching this drama summary. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future updates. See you in the next drama breakdown. Take care, and bye-bye. Don't forget to subscribe for more. Check out more recaps you'll absolutely love right here.